Much games. Do you want to know what really triggers my nostalgia? It's all these plug-and-play systems that feature a console's greatest hits. Whether it's the Intellivision, ColecoVision, Genesis, or Atari flashbacks, or even ones such as the NES and SNES classics. These are going to give you a great trip down memory lane at an amazing value. Because let's face it, it's a whole lot cheaper to buy one of these plug-and-play consoles with about 20 to 30 games on them than, say, going out and buying an NES with those same 30 cartridges. Plus, they feature some of the most iconic games for the console, with sometimes the added bonus of a game that you never got to try before, such as the SNES Classic gave you Star Fox 2, which was never released before. That was an amazing bonus and a great incentive to go out and buy it. Heck, it got me to buy it. So, what can I say? But like I was saying, these consoles should feature the system's most iconic games. But they can't do all of them due to licensing, hardware limitations, or other reasons, and that's okay, as long as they feature the system's core games. As long as you have the core games, you can add all the filler games you want, as long as the core games are there. Which brings me to the PlayStation Classic. Sony just recently announced it a few months back, and it's coming out in the near future. But when I think of PlayStation, I think of 6 core games. What are those core games, you might be wondering? Well, those are Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Tomb Raider, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, and Parappa the Rappa. But guess what? When Sony announced their PlayStation Classic, out of the 20 games they announced, only 2 of those core games are included. Those are Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid. Don't get me wrong, those are fantastic games, and I'm excited to see them on that list. What I'm sad about is 2/3 of their 6 core games are missing. Now, I can understand maybe getting rid of like Parappa the Rappa or Tomb Raider, but how could you get rid of Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon from the PlayStation Classic? Those 2 were literally mascots of the PlayStation. Like, when you think of PlayStation, those should be the 2 games, the 2 mascots that come to your mind. Oh, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. But no, they got cut from it. But they included games such as Jumping Flash and Intelligent Cube. Who cares about those games? Who even knew about those games before the PlayStation Classic was even announced? Like, really? That's what you're including on your PlayStation Classic, but you're cutting 2 characters that were your mascot, their original games you're cutting? I can't fathom that. This right here, the PlayStation Classic, is just going to be a shameless cash grab from Sony to beat Nintendo into releasing the N64 Classic. They just want to get it out there before the N64 Classic comes out. But the equivalent of this would be if Nintendo announced the N64 Classic but decided to cut games such as Super Mario 64 and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time from it, but gave you games such as Glover or, I don't know, Buck Bumble. How weird would that be? Like, would people actually go out and buy the N64 Classic if it didn't have those 2 games? No. Why is it any different with the PlayStation Classic? That's just really strange to me that they decided to rush this console and get that out instead of putting their 2 mascots on there. But, you see, I can understand some of the factors that went into this that might be the reason why they didn't include it, such as Activision this year releasing remastered trilogies for both of them. They had the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, as well as the Spyro Reignited trilogy, which is coming out in a few weeks. So maybe that's the reason where Sony approached them, and was like, hey, can we put those on the PS Classic? And Activision's like, no, not this year. Maybe next year, but not this year. We want to get all the revenue from those games. They have every right to. Personally, if I was Activision, I would do the same thing. But the thing that bugs me is that instead of Sony waiting, they decided to be like, oh, well, we can't get those, let's just release it anyways. Personally, I think they should have waited or paid up to try to get those 2 games on there. Because, let's face it, even if those 2 were on the PlayStation Classic, people are still going to buy the Reignited and the Insane trilogy. Worst case, they don't play the first game, but they still get 2 other games on those. And to me, that's well worth it. You see, with the PlayStation Classic, I believe Sony should have waited and done it right instead of rushing it and disappointing fans. Oh well, what you gonna do? They already announced it. It's gonna come out soon. I just wonder what in the world Crash Bandicoot and Spyro are doing now.